guys, it's Stephanie.
Hi, I'm Emily.
So today we're going to do something a little different. Instead of doing a book review, we are going to talk about the top 5 books we liked in 2016. It's already March, but it's not too late, right?
Whatever, we're doing it anyway.
Yeah, we're going to do it anyways. So we're going to do the top 5 books. I picked 3, she picked 2 books, and we don't have any particular order. We're just going to go one by one with our picks. Alright, so my first pick is actually Fangirl by ROWELL, however you pronounce her last name. I read this book back in 2016, obviously, and I really liked it. I mostly read it because she wrote a like a spin-off book called Carry On, which actually talks about the magic, like the fan fiction for the book that's in Fangirl. But like, I really liked it. I thought it was like a good book. It had like good characters, good world building. The romance between Kath and like Regan's boyfriend was also like kind of there, even though it's Regan's boyfriend. But like, I really liked it. I thought she knew what she was doing. I also have a good my link to my book review. You guys want to check that out. It'll be more in depth as to why I like it.
My first selection for 2016 was Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. I actually got around to reading it finally last year. I understand there was like a movie before that with Ben Affleck, etc. But the reason why I liked it a lot was that I think it was incredibly well written for a thriller. Like maybe it was just that I personally am not an avid fan of thrillers, so I don't have that much exposure to it. But the whole angle of how like she used different sort of clues, different sort of like human dynamics between like, oh, there's like the puzzle that they always need to solve between husband and wife, and I like the order of how like the story went. It went from like girl meets boy finds girl, and then like I forget what the last act, that part 3 was called, but it's just the organization of the story overall like really enthralled me. And some of the things that I actually learned a lot about, I didn't have any idea that.
I just heard your back crack.
Oh really? Okay. So I had no idea what Judy dolls were, first of all, and I didn't even understand.
What is that?
Judy dolls apparently are these puppets. Like, it was actually explained in the book that they use for like, I guess like really like dark, morbid humor, and it's like this sort of satire on the working class, where Judy, who's like the wife, and then I forget the male husband, the husband puppet, like he basically beats her all the time in the story. Like, it's supposed to be like a sort of like really, like I said, it was sort of like a dark humor sort of skit. And I really, like, after finding out what they were, I felt like she employed that sort of, you know, particular technique, and actually mentioning them in that particular part of the story really, really well, because of the fact that, like, as we go into it, like, Gone Girl is about this wife who kind of goes a bit insane, because her husband is a philandering prick, and he also took her money to her dwindling fortune to then build a life that she never really wanted to be part of. Overall, that was like one of my top picks for 2016. Unfortunately, I didn't read that much fiction last year. As you can tell, my next selection is going to be pretty hardcore nonfiction.
My next pick, It Had to Be You by Suzanne Elizabeth Phillips. It's the first book of a series, and they're all like romantic rom-coms, basically. Yeah, like chiclets, and all of them have like a football theme, because they're all based in Chicago, if I remember correctly. And it's basically the first book kind of talks about the daughter of a football coach manager who owns like the team, and how he died and apparently passed it on to her, so she became like, you know, the manager, whatever, owner of like the football team, and she had to deal with the head coach, who at that time was like, you know, he was good at his job, but he thought, like, you know, as a female, he was just like, who does she think she is? Like, she's not going to do anything, obviously, like, it's football, like, it's a man's sport, blah blah blah. And then they fall in love, because obviously it's like a romantic story. So I like this book mainly because the main reason why I like this book is because a lot of romantic chiclets book out there they're not realistic in terms of like timing and pace of the book. So they'll meet each other, they fall in love within a few weeks, and you're just like, really? A few weeks? Like, doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But all her books are very realistic in the fact that, you know, there's an actual reason for why they meet up, and then how they fall in love is an actual, it seems realistic. It's like months later or like even a year later, and that seems much more realistic compared to like a few weeks later. I mean, and you see all the struggles they go through, the conflicts between the two, and you can see why they fall in love, as opposed to wondering, how did they fall in love again? Like, they met each other, they bumped each other in the street, and then bam, they're in love. Like, come on, guys. So I really like this series because it was more realistic. It made a lot more sense, and like the characters were really good. And that's why I like the first book the most out of the series. Also because like some of the other books, a lot of the females will like trick the males into believing something, and then somehow they fall in love. And then, I mean, it still makes sense how they fall in love with each other, but it's like, why are the females so sneaky in the beginning? Like, they don't have to be. But the first book was Phoebe, and I forgot the guy's name, but Phoebe was like the main character, and she was just like a little awkward. She grew up kind of like, you know, socially awkward because she was under this like kind of like her dad had a lot of expectations for her, but like not really at the same time, because she was female and he was like the owner of a football team. But like because of that, so she was a little awkward, socially awkward and in depth, but she was also really smart. And that's how she was able to bring this football team from like not that great to like actually really good at the end of the book, because she knew what she was doing, even though she didn't know football specifically. So she had to have the head coach teacher kind of like, you know, the rules of the game and whatnot. But she had like a business mind, which I think was like really good, and she didn't trick him into liking her and falling in love with her like some of the other girls in the series did.
Cool. And also, I guess my only input was that they're not in college, right?
No, they're all old. They're all
okay,
like,
because I was about to say,
because
college students,
no,
by the way, fall in love
these,
in weeks.
No, these are people like, a lot of the stories are people who are already in their mid-30s or like late 30s, because the head coach obviously he's already retired. I mean, not retired, like retired from playing as a professional football player. So by that time he's already like late 30s, maybe even early 40s. And the girl obviously is like around the same age, because you're not going to have like a really young girl.
We'd hope.
We hope. We think. But yeah, so like all the stories so far have usually been guys who have already, even like this other books down the road, all the guys are already at the really end of their career, or they've like already like, you know, they're done with their professional life.
Like they've already grown up.
Right, they've already grown up. Yeah, exactly. So it's definitely not like a YA novel for sure. So that's probably why it's more realistic too.
Okay.
But yeah.
So for my next pick and last pick of 2016, I'm actually going to talk about a nonfiction book called The Omnivore's Dilemma by Michael Pollan. So if anyone's familiar with food journalism, Michael Pollan is really famous for a lot of his narrative stories on how plants influence people in terms of what they actually manage to cater to us so that we can be their ultimate pollinizationers, or that's probably not even a word, but like we help their pollination go. And for The Omnivore's Dilemma, interesting enough, it's not really about plants this time, it's actually about the overall food industry, and like there's little snippets about like I told you when we went to South Carolina about like the mushroom hunters, where like everything was like an exclusive little club. Yeah. And that was
I told you about that.
Did you tell me about that?
Yeah, I told you about how there was like a mushroom forager in New York City, and like
but then I told you it was like actually secret, like some of it can be really exclusive,
they might
and
not
how
tell
like
you, like
I brought in the exclusivity. You just mentioned the thing.
Because like one of my friends told me like, oh, you know there's a mushroom forager club, and I was just like, thanks for telling me.
It's
I mean, I love mushrooms, but like I'm not gonna go out there and forage it for myself.
So he goes into the idea of like truffles. And he also talks a lot about something maybe not incredibly of interest to you, but like the feral pigs in California and in Hawaii, and how much that's actually destroying like the environment there. So a lot of
feral pigs.
So feral pigs are like, in that case, it's like pigs that we domesticated and then they like went back in the wild and then like became wild again.
Oh.
Yeah,
okay.
and like they're actually like, you know how like rabbits were for Australia, like now that's a huge problem in the US as well. And so like in terms of feral pigs, like that's like the debate he was trying to bring. It was like, is it really like interesting, like how some people say vegetarianism is like the way to go in terms of sustainability, if not for health. But then there's like all these other like animal issues as well. And I think his main key point in the book itself, which a lot of actually schools even like elementary school, middle schools and high schools actually read, maybe not elementary schools, but like middle school and high school classrooms actually read it, is about like the idea of corn and how like GMOs kind of work along in I guess altering like how cows are, and how like a lot of like the industry has been like catering towards like production versus like, you know, quality for our foods, and how like he just goes along about telling this story through one cow that he buys. And he basically goes through the entire process of like, where did this cow go and what happens to it? And that's like the first segment of the story. And then eventually later on, he talk about the mushrooms and then like the feral pigs. And it's really quite fascinating to see the people behind the work in terms of like, you know, because we're all talking about eating organic, and I understand like, it's not the most fascinating like fantasy topic ever, but food is like a huge part of everyone's lives, and the idea of like that people are able to eat food that's fair and of decent quality without having to, you know, later on compromise in terms of health and safety, it was a big thing for me last year. So I read this book on the premise of trying to understand why, if there was actually a reason to why like I struggle with food and also with weight, and then and how other people come to approach it. So the title itself, The Omnivore's Dilemma, is really just about how people, because we're not specialized to eat one thing like butterflies are, or like bees, we come to deliberate on our selection of food. And so like now, as we know, we have supermarkets, which didn't always exist in human history. And so whenever you go in, it's like, what aisle do you actually go to? Do you go to the produce all the time? We do now.
I usually do, I go to produce.
But like when you were younger, you were like incentivized. Yeah, exactly. So like he goes into like those little descriptions about how like marketing kind of works towards that, and like things like these topics have been brought up on like John Oliver and like a lot of the other talk show hosts themes, and it's a definite point of contention.
So for the last book for this video, it is Afterfall by Suzanne E. It's a trilogy, it's a dystopian trilogy, and that's the first book. It's actually, I remember reading it like beginning of 2016, and it was probably one of like my favorite, and I don't know if it still is my favorite dystopian novels, like trilogy series out there, but it's definitely top of the list because the characters are well developed. The story, the plot line is also really good as well. There's no bad ending like freaking Veronica Roth her Divergent series. Everything was good. So like the character, I think her name is like Penren, and basically the whole synopsis of the story is how something, I don't know what happened exactly, but somehow angels are now in the world, and how they basically rule the world now with their wings and everything. They have like archangels and they have like regular angels, and how they basically they kind of bully the humans. And it was interesting because the angels viewed like humans as monkeys. They were like, oh, these monkeys, they're so dumb. They look retarded. They don't look beautiful like we do, like very like vain and stuff. So there was a huge like hierarchy of like angels up there and then humans down here. And then people were like, and the whole God thing was like, no one apparently has heard from him in like forever, which is why the angels now do their own thing with the humans, because they're like, well, we haven't heard from God in a while.
That sounds quite fascinating.
Yeah, so they're like, well, we haven't heard from God in a while, you know, so we're just going to like run the world like we, like, you know, like normal. And but then because the way how they treat humans is actually like really terrible, So it's like a dystopian novel about how the humans are trying to survive basically, and the bad people in this book are the angels. So Penren is like this girl. She has a mother and a sister, and the sister I believe is like handicapped or something. So she's always very protective of her family. And I think her mom also had like some mental problems. So she was the person who had to take care of them. So the entire book was basically her trying to save her family, her mother, her sister from these angels, and these angels were also doing like experiments and like etc. So it was just like, I don't know. And the main guy is Rafi or whatever, but he's Raphael, the archangel. Basically that's his identity. And you see how like originally I think his wings got broken. There's something about like he got injured and she had to help him in because of a certain situation. And they started off as a very unlikely pair because it's one archangel, which is like really high up there, versus a human. So in the beginning, she was like, angels are terrible, but I have to work with him because I'm trying to get like my sister back, I think was what it was. And then on his side, he was just like, oh my god, humans are monkeys, they're like gross, they smell bad, they look ugly, blah blah blah. And how they managed to like work together to try to, because he was trying to get his wings fixed, and she was trying to get her sister back. So somehow like their goals were different, but the path they were taking were the same. So they decided to work together and try to accomplish what they're trying to achieve. And as you see along the 3 books, like the different obstacles they face, how their relationship turns from a very like, no, I don't want to talk to you, but we're forced to work together, to a more like mutually trustful relationship. And like they also obviously fall in love because it's YA at the end of the day. But like that's another part of why I liked it, because it's after like working together for so long that they finally start to develop feelings for each other. So it's much more realistic, as opposed to like a typical YA novel. So I really like this series because I thought the premise was really interesting. Like I also read this via audiobook, and some audiobooks are like not the best to be, some books are not meant to be in audiobooks, and some of them can, and I was glad that this one was one, because it was, I think the narrator also did a really good job. And so she was like, the book was like really good. I love the characters, the story, the plot was also really good as well. And there's a lot of like even in the angel hierarchy, it was also a lot of like good angels versus bad angels. So you really get to see which is good and which one isn't so good, and who actually has like authority over them, and what really happened to their direct connection with God. So like at the end, like you had to answer all these questions, and I think the author did a good job in concluding the series as well, which is really important. So I definitely think this was one of my top like YA dystopian trilogy out there. So yeah, my pick for 2016.
Cool. So we've suggested YA, an adult romance book.
Yeah.
What was your other one? YA realism, right?
Yeah, it was more like it was like a realism, contemporary
YA, and then my suggestion had been about a thriller, and then
a nonfiction.
The clear. Stop looking like that when I say that. Yeah. But like a really good like narrative nonfiction about the world today. So
yeah. So I think we gave a pretty diverse number of books in case you want to check them out. I will link all of them on the bottom over there, as well as my reviews for the ones that I have picked, in case you want to check that out as well. But yeah, so if you have any comments about what your favorite 2016 books were, or if you read any of the or if you read any of the ones that we had mentioned and want to give your little feedback, that would be interesting as well. But yeah, that's it for today.
All right, thanks.
All right, thank you.
Thank you guys.
Bye.